Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Aarna Sahu, host of Aarna's News, where on this podcast channel, I aim to eliminate the gender gap in the STEM fields by featuring inspiring female professionals and highlighting their stories and accomplishments to further encourage girls. Today on episode 92.
All of those very painful pieces of my career, that were really hard at times and challenging. It's like giving me strength in multitudes now, or giving me a skill set that I wouldn't have had but for going through that. So you do sometimes you just have to get the muscle memory built up, or you have to get that thick skin built up. You have to get just doing the work sometimes over repetitively. Like that's where you get that knowledge. Sometimes like dealing with a really horrible situation, like something goes sideways at work and you have to figure out how to fix it, that's where you learn the most. And I think knowing that if something happens, I'm learning from this. I'm gonna learn where this is never gonna happen again in my life. If I had anything to do with it, I think there's a lot of value if you can approach it from that perspective. That's really, really important.
Today, on episode 92, I'm pleased to announce our guest, Kassi Burns. She is a senior attorney at King Spalding LLP based in Texas. She holds a law degree from Tulane Law School, attended the University of Canterbury in New Zealand as a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar, is a member of the Texas and Arkansas bars, and has multiple legal technology-related certifications. As an attorney with over 10 years of experience working in AI and machine learning in litigation, Kassi's career has advanced by always being curious and following technology innovations. In addition to a growing collection of publications on topics related to AI, Kassi is actively engaged in thought leadership through her podcast, Kassi and, focused on the impact of emergent technologies to our professional and personal lives. Kassi is an executive board member of the Academy of Court-Appointed Neutrals and a member of Relativity's Attorney Advisory Board. She's an active member of various legal organizations and affinity groups where she enthusiastically advocates for emerging technology awareness and education. So thank you so much, Kassi, for being here today. Before we dive into the questions, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, Aarna, thank you so much. As you mentioned, I'm an attorney. I'm based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I do work remotely because my firm currently doesn't have an office in Dallas. And yeah, I've bounced around. I've lived in Texas. I've lived in the DC area. I've lived in New Orleans, New Zealand, and life has led me down this interesting path. So yeah,
I
that's
love it. I love it. All right, so my first question for you is tell us a bit about your career path.
My career path is a winding one. It's not one that I walked forward with intention, knowing I was going to be what I'm referred to in my own circles, an e-discovery attorney. It's something that I fell into and a lot of my colleagues fell into because it's not a practice of law that's very well known. It is one that is very key to litigation and even internal investigations, things like that. But if you look at the timeline of a lawsuit is filed at the beginning, and at the end there may be a trial. And in the middle there, that's whenever the parties build their cases. And part of that is the parties under U.S. civil law have an obligation to exchange documents with each other so each side can build their respective cases. And as you can imagine, in the early 1900s, that wasn't a big deal, maybe a couple of boxes of documents, but because of, the advent of email, computers, and all sorts of types of data sources, that's becoming increasingly complex. So we have been using AI and machine learning in our practice for a long time to try and find the most relevant documents to send to the other side, because there's a whole review and vetting process that you have to go through. So definitely one I fell into. I started out right out of law school wanting to practice copyright, trademark, worked in-house for a company doing franchise law, and then just kind of fell into e-discovery and really enjoyed the technology. So I ran with it.
I love it. And with artificial intelligence and technology, your industry did change and it expanded. And so what might have been the normal in like the 1900s is totally not the normal now. And
Yeah.
and yeah, it just goes to show how you can fuse so many things together. Like you are in law, but you are using artificial intelligence and machine learning, which we'll get into later. But yeah, it's super cool how you can fuse two different industries together to combat a problem.
Yeah, and it's so funny because my family has long been tortured as any professional trying to explain to people what we do. And the e-discovery niche is a very not well-known niche, even within the legal community. And it's often looked at as not as sophisticated practice of law because I think a lot of attorneys still see it as it's just one step beyond just scanning documents. But now we're doing things like worried about bias, worrying about validation, documenting and having defensible workflows, really getting closely tied and in tune with data in a way that I think a lot of people don't get to. And is, if you think of in litigation, there are two main pillars to litigation. There's the law, the legal standard, and then there's facts and how those facts fit in with that legal standard to then decide an outcome. And it's that fact element that e-discovery is so key to because that's where your evidence comes from. And that is becoming increasingly more challenging and difficult because data sources are expanding, becoming more challenging, and really becoming very integral. And as some data becomes more pervasive because of things like Internet of Things, where there's a lot of data tracking our activities, we're starting to see that make its way into court. I think 2022, 2023, we saw a lot of cases where mobile phone data was very relevant. So, the Depthy Heard and Theranos litigation, FTX, any of those kinds of cases, a lot of times it's the messages in random apps that ends up being really important. And that's, right in my wheelhouse. So,
Yeah, with so many different forms of communication, like as you said, apps and notifications, everything can say something. And there are so many different like professions here, like with what you're doing, and it's just a completely different career scope that you can think of.
exactly.
All right, so my question for you goes really well is what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours? And do you have any tips to succeed?
I think thinking of the party you're communicating with, because to me, what makes a very successful person in this, it's not just the technical skills and it's not just the legal skills, but how good are you at conveying the information that you're trying to share and being aware of who that audience is and tailoring that message. So it's really marrying, the hard skills and the soft skills. And if you can be someone that can really communicate well and think ahead, like I'm going to give you this answer on a silver platter and make your life so easy. I'm going to think of all the questions you're going to have and I'm already going to find them and have them in this email. I'm going to package it in a way that visually is very easy for a busy, chief legal officer to absorb or a general counsel to absorb. So really just trying to not only do your analysis, but also how do I message it in a way that it will be absorbed efficiently with minimal, pain points. And also a lot of times people you're working with have decision fatigue. So if you already know that there are some recommendations you might have, include that in there, be very consultative. That's what people want in these situations because a lot of times I would say, especially in the legal profession, attorneys are not as comfortable saying they're not comfortable if they're like powerhouses in their area of law, and that pain point often comes when technology comes into play. So being that in essence interpreter and being that solution for them, that to me is a great skill. So don't just think of the hard skills, the technical skills, really think about your ability to communicate.
I love what you said over there because one of the best things to do is to communicate things to other people, right? But sometimes you're going to talk to so many different people of different backgrounds. And as you said, try to make that information more easily perceptible and more accessible. So for some people, they have different minds on their own. I'm a visual learner, but my friend might not be a visual learner. She might love, doing things with her hands. So, of course, if you're talking to someone, then do know what their strengths are so you can market your idea even better. It kind of goes to show that yes, you need to have the skills, but at the same time, you need to be able to present yourself. So, merge your hard skills and your soft skills together.
Exactly. Exactly. And soft skill is kind of it's nearly like a misnomer because that to me is the hardest skill to teach. And anytime I've managed people like that soft touch and thinking ahead, it's really people kind of have that inclination or they don't. Not they can be taught, but it's and it's invaluable if you have someone who's like got it, that knows how to like reorganize information in a way that's not off-putting, or you can adjust depending on your target audience. There's some people who you just barely mention technology and their soul leaves their body. So knowing that, like, how do I package this information that's not uber technical, turning them off? How do I keep them engaged and let them make a decision and go on their way, to other things they would probably rather be doing?
100% agreed. And there really is no classroom or course for teaching soft skills. Like, how do you collaborate with someone better if they're, not like you? And how do you, speak up if you have public speaking anxiety? There really isn't a teacher for that. It's just something you have to learn on the job. You just have to do repetitively and continuously to understand, how do I manage my soft skills better and how do I get better at this skill? It's just something you have to just learn by doing.
And I think being aware and having, maybe it's called emotional intelligence or empathy or knowing your audience, putting yourself in their shoes. And also, how can I make this communication flow as efficient as possible? I send an email and they have a question back, and then I have to answer that, and then they have more questions from that. How do I make that two emails instead of five? How do I deliver their information to them in a way that you're giving them an update, you're providing technical details, you're providing recommendations, and then you're asking that in a way to where their response back is very easy, like, yes, I agree with you, yes, please move forward. If you're leaving an open-ended question for them to then fill you in, you're likely not going to get a response right away, and you may not get the response you want, and it may not be the best response for the technical challenge. So again, that's where being consultative and not just task oriented is very important.
And it's also just being really efficient that way because if you send a two thread email or something, that might just take like, I don't know, a week. But
Exactly.
if you send five emails and you just have to like reply back and forth, that might be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month.
Mhm.
So time is of the essence. So definitely if you're cold emailing, cold messaging, just send all the information and just try to think of all of the key aspects the person on the other side might want to think of. And that's just how you do it.
Exactly.
All right. So my question for you is, what is a common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
We don't do math. We do math. We do math. Some of us do at least. I think a lot of the joke is, oh, I don't like math, so I became a lawyer. And some of us who do practice AI, machine learning, again, like we're using technology assisted review, and we're using it in an adversarial setting. So we have another side on the other side of the V who is saying, okay, maybe you're using these tools to create efficiencies, but you better do darn good job of it. It better be accurate. It better be diverse. It better, have minimal error. And you have there's formulas that you have to track for precision and recall and just doing any of that like that. And also you do have to use Excel as an attorney. I use Excel all the time and I love Excel. So attorneys that can jump around from app to app and comfortable in technology, it's just going to make your life easier. So especially now with generative AI, that's a little bit more trendy than maybe the tech that I've done for the past 10 years. But yeah, I would say we do math and we do play around with technology.
Absolutely. And what you're doing is you're fusing technology and law in an essence to help cases be solved. So math is definitely there, STEM is definitely there. It's not something that, okay, because I go to one side of the industry, it's not that I leave that thing. It kind of goes back to hard skills and soft skills. You might think that, okay, if I'm presenting a presentation, I don't need to worry about my public speaking. I just need to worry about what I know about the content. but you have to fuse things together. It doesn't really go away.
Exactly. Presentation is key no matter what. So, exactly.
And my next question for you is if you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
What would I have asked myself that I didn't, or what would I ask? Yes.
Yeah, what would you have asked yourself?
That's a, I think maybe not ask myself, but tell myself, if that's okay, if you don't mind me saying that, I would say trust the process. Because there have been times in my career where I'm like, I just randomly happened upon this, and it wasn't like my prospects didn't look great, and you're just like trying to make it day to day. And, oh, no one respects any discovery attorney. And I can look back, now 15 years later, and I can say, because I dealt with that challenging thing in my career, that's sometimes not encouraging. Things weren't always easy. Like you were, like this kind of unknown force. Like you didn't really think maybe I've tapped out my career, but all of those things that I did, really being in the weeds, it really created the skill set to get me to where I am today. And I can look back and see everywhere I went, like that's something I learned there, and that's something I learned there. And it can be very hard to patient early in your career, because I think we're all like type A personalities. We want the knowledge as quickly as possible. It's not like we want the accolades without the work. We just want to compress all that work in, like a 6 month period so we can move on. And that's just not how life is, unfortunately, So you do kind of have to work through it, be patient. Um, if you feel like your career's off track, you're not getting where it is, those thoughts are valid. But don't give up hope, and just keep moving forward, and keep your head up. And I would say don't give up. Don't feel like you peaked at like 22 or anything. So
I love
yeah.
that. I love that. I mean, it kind of goes to show that what we're doing right now with technology, like for me, I have a really bad attention span because I'm pretty much on social media all the time. And so when things don't go the way that I want it to go in like maybe the first 5 minutes, I get kind of frustrated. And definitely in a career you can't have that attention span of just like 5 minutes because when you get a new opportunity or when things don't work out, you kind of do have to trust the process. You have to alter your mind a little bit to still have hope for whatever you're doing at the present moment. And it's hard, of course, but at the same time, what happens, like what you do now will affect what you do in the future. So say for example, if you're struggling right now, maybe that's a learning opportunity and in the next 5 years, you'll have benefited from that. And if you haven't, then at least you learned something along the way.
Exactly. And it's not easy to hear that in the moment, trust me, but I can look back and see all of those very painful pieces of my career, that were really hard at times and challenging. I it's like giving me strength in multitudes now, or giving me a skill set that I wouldn't have had but for going through that. So you do, sometimes you have to get the muscle memory built up, or you have to get that thick skin built up, you have to get, just doing the work sometimes over repetitively, like that's where you get that knowledge. Sometimes, like dealing with a really horrible situation, like something goes sideways at work and you have to figure out how to fix it, that's where you learn the most. And I think knowing that if something happens, I'm learning from this. I'm gonna learn where this is never gonna happen again in my life. If I had anything to do with it, I think there's a lot of value if you can approach it from that perspective. That's really, really important, and really, you know, because a lot of time I'm very hypercritical of myself, and like I will QC something two, three, four times, and that can be a great thing, but also don't beat yourself up. Like just know there was a mistake that was made. I'm fixing it. I'm creating, continuous improvement practices in my head and moving forward. And I think that's the important thing, because we can be very hard on ourselves a lot. And I think it's letting yourself be okay with making mistakes as long as you're learning from them and you own them too, so.
And what you said over there is so important to know, because it's hard to realize this while you're going through it in the present moment. Like, if you're suffering right now, you probably don't want someone to tell you, okay, it'll be fine. Just wait like a couple of
Right.
years, it'll be
Hmm.
great. It's hard because when we are at the one of like the lowest points in our career in our life, we really don't want to hear other people like sugarcoat things. But I still think that it's so important to keep it in the back of your head that, okay, just trust the process, just tough it out. Like it's difficult, but what happens, like what'll happen if you leave this and you quit and you'll never know what happened after. There's always the possibility that something good can happen. So if you just hang on to that hope, then you'll push through.
Right, exactly. And I've seen that in my own career cycle, doing what I did where I was largely reviewing documents, and that's part of the process of an e-discovery attorney. You have to look at the documents before you give them to the other side. And that's not a very like high-powered job or illustrious or sought after job, but now having used AI in that process, and I've always knew as soon as, because whenever I first started doing it, we didn't have AI. Back on the Oregon Trail, back in the olden times, we really did just kind of like review every single doc in a database. But over time, we added on analytics-based tools to create predictive models of what's more likely to be relevant to this matter. And so you can create a lot of efficiencies over time. And I saw that start to happen, and I thought, I'm going to follow that. I'm going to be the person who knows as much about that as possible, because I just knew that was a smart thing. And now, 10 years later, AI is a hot. Now, whenever I explain people what my job is, I don't say, well, I'm an e-discovery attorney and we kind of exchange emails back and forth. No, I say, I'm an attorney who's been using AI and machine learning and litigation for like 10 years. And that's it's easier for people to understand, and it's kind of a trendy, cool thing to say. And it actually is very impressive. We in essence are using technology that is not unlike social media feeds, where the documents that the algorithm think you're more likely want to look at are going to float to the top. That's not unlike what we do in e-discovery. We want to see the documents first that are more likely going to need to get produced to the other side. So,
And because you decided to stick with, what you were doing at the moment, 10 years later, things actually blossomed. Um,
right. We're
yeah, and
having a
like,
glow up. It's a Cinderella moment,
yep.
Arna.
And AI is definitely a hot topic. So, you stuck with it and it treated you well.
Yes, yes, we hope so. And I'm not unique. There's so many great e-discovery professionals, and we're going to be needed, honestly. If you start looking at AI governance, you look at some of the language around the laws that are starting to pass. There's an element of, diversity of data sets, validation, checking for bias, and tracking workflows, documentation. Those are all things that we've done with client data. So it's an interesting, exciting time for people like myself. And again, like when you reached out to me, Arna, I was so excited because we never talk in e-discovery about it being a STEM profession. We never do. It's nearly like we're so used to being this island of misfit toys, the redheaded stepchildren, that we're not really good at saying, wow, this is really scientific based, it's math based, it's so many other things. And it is a STEM career choice. So I'm so glad that you recognized that and you reached out to me. So I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is a great segue to my question, which is what are the best resources slash books that have helped you find your career path?
Well, I would say not find it because it found me, but I would say what it keeps me moving forward is how we connected through LinkedIn, and the fact that you're in high school and on LinkedIn. Very impressed. You're going to be president of the United States before long, I'm pretty sure. But I find LinkedIn to be a great aggregator of information if you follow the right people. LinkedIn about 5 years ago was very salesy focused, like listen to what my firm or my company is doing, what solution we offer. But now it's, hey, this new thing just passed, or this new law, AI law has been proposed, or this new privacy, or this new litigation. And there's a lot. If you're following the right people, you can get, I get more like news alerts just from my LinkedIn feed than I do anywhere else. So if you're interested, especially right now, the news cycle with anything AI is very, very rapid and it's overwhelming, to be perfectly honest. And I think finding people that you want to follow is a great way. Again, on LinkedIn, it's tends to be a little bit more like business focused, so it's not as much chatter or anything like that. So I find that to be the best resource. I love reading books as well. I just don't have as much time to read books. I have a huge pile of things to read, but to me, really getting those sound bites of information, LinkedIn, and having good quality people that you're following is a great start.
Absolutely. Like, there's so many different social medias. Like, there's Instagram, there's TikTok, there's LinkedIn, and there's Twitter or X. And there every single social media has a different thing. So Instagram and TikTok, they're really fun ones. You just go there for fun. But like LinkedIn, as you said, has like a bunch of different information and new things. And same with Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I think it's X now. There's also really cool information on these social medias. So while many people do want to stay away from them, like it's understandable, but that's pretty much like the hotspot of AI. Like on
Mhm.
my feed, I follow a bunch of different high school students who are also entrepreneurs, and I just hear what they're doing, and it's really cool because pretty much every single people who wants to share their stuff, they're on LinkedIn. So it's one of like the best tools to use.
Yeah, I think it's just a great, even if you don't want to like or respond or post yourself, just having that as an info feed, I think is a great way to leverage LinkedIn because people are sharing a lot of really, I mean, that's where I learned that the EU AI Act passed first. Someone got the scoop and shared it on there. So I knew it more than faster than I think any of my colleagues at my firm, just because I will literally keep my LinkedIn feed open. I don't always look at it, but I like just to pop into it like from time to time or pop on my phone. Just again, like just to see what's exciting, what's going on. Because every day there's a lot to consume. So
Absolutely. And my last question for you is, what do you think is the vital factor that shaped your career? What was your life before learning it, and what was your life after learning it?
I think I'm capable of doing more than I think I can. And, whether it's I have a ton of stuff on my to-do list, and it can be very easy to get overwhelmed and shut down and think, I can be very productive. I'm a very productive person. I can get a lot of stuff done. I'm not going to let this stress me out. I can do this. And then similarly, doing something I've never done before, like knowing I'm a fast learner. I know how to ask questions. I know how to be uncomfortable being comfortable being uncomfortable. Like having that getting comfortable with that feeling of like, I don't know what I'm doing and this is not great, but I'm going to work through it and figure it out. Like that really is a very important skill set to have. Like that discomfort of this is not a domain I feel super comfortable in, but that's really how you learn. And you really have to feel comfortable pushing yourself doing that. And I think it's always with the confines of knowing you're not going to do anything that's going to be unethical, and then I'm going to do something that is not so far removed from my practice of law, and not having a partner in that practice of law look at it. Like, I'm not going to do that, but don't sell yourself short, And I think there have been periods in my life where I was just like, that's it, I've maxed out. And like you get myopic and you don't think that there are opportunities out there, even if you don't know what they are. And I think once you kind of put that self-doubt away, you feel comfortable learning new things, that and also knowing and having faith that I can learn quickly. I can get a lot of stuff done. Have that little like pep talk to yourself, be your own hype man. I think like that's really important. Um, you're never going to completely get the self-doubt away, but knowing that you can have both on your shoulder at the same time and listen to the hype man more than the self-doubt, I think that's really important.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short and do trust the process because, you just got to follow your journey. And of course, if things don't work out, they don't work out. But if they do, then more reason to stay in.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Cassie, for being here today. I absolutely love talking to you. Before we end off, do you have any last words to the audience?
Always follow the technology, always be curious, play around, Don't think that you can't do something because you don't know, especially right now, we all don't know. None of us know. And if anyone says they're a expert, an AI, there are very few who I would really feel that way, especially like AI governance. So don't sell yourself short. Don't think, you are not capable of it. Yes, do it. Be audacious. That's my word of advice to people. Have the audacity to go out there and put yourself out there.
Well, thank you so much, Kassi. I absolutely love talking to you.
Well, I enjoyed it too, Aarna. And thank you again for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
And here are my 3 cents on this episode with Kassi. 1. Value of learning from mistakes. Mistakes are not failures, but opportunities for growth. Each mistake provides a chance to learn something new and improve. 2. The importance of persistence and hope. Perseverance and maintaining hope are crucial for success because they are inevitable in any endeavor with challenges and difficulties. Staying determined and hopeful even when things are tough can help you push through obstacles. And 3. Ubiquity of math in various skill sets. Mathematical skills are universally applicable across different fields. It is not confined to traditional STEM fields, but essential in areas like finance, data analytics, logistics, and in litigation. Thus, that concludes the episode for this week. If you want to know more about how I relate to these amazing topics, then stay tuned for upcoming episodes. A free way to support this show is by leaving it a 5-star rating and a review on the player you are listening to. Let me know what you enjoy about this podcast, as it's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Once again, thank you for finding me, and I hope we stay in touch with each other. Zito, you're listening to Aarna Sahu, the host of Aarna's News. Toodles!